Welcome to Andy's Garage. I'm Andy Phillips. Today I'm going to show you how to replace the intake manifold gaskets on a Chevy Trailblazer. Now this is with the 5.3 liter V8. So if you have any of the other vehicles that General Motors made with the 5.3 liter V8, the process would be the same. Let's go ahead and get started.
These are the items that you'll need to complete this. First of all, you will need your replacement gaskets. You can get these anywhere. You can get them at automotive stores. You can get them online. They're very easy to come by for this vehicle. Next, you will need a flathead screwdriver, also a ratchet, a set of adjustable pliers or something to remove the hose clamps, and then you will need the fuel release tool. In addition, you also need extensions for the ratchet. I have here 3 different sizes, but a long and a short is needed. And then 2 sockets, an 8mm and a 10mm will be required. And then lastly, a set of hose pliers that comes in handy for removing some of the hoses. These are the items that you need. Let's get started.
So looking under the hood, our intake manifold is back here. To get to it, we need to remove this air intake duct, which goes from the mass airflow sensor to the throttle body. Then you have your air cleaner up here. So I'll get a close-up and show you what you're going to need to remove it, and then I'm going to go ahead and take it off, and then we will be back to continue on. Here on top, you're going to need a T30 Torx bit to remove this from the air cleaner. And then where it connects to the mass airflow sensor and the throttle body, the only thing that you need really is a flathead screwdriver. So I'm going to remove all of this, take this air intake duct piece off, and then we'll be back to see what's underneath and what we need to do next. Sometimes this can be tight where it connects to the mass airflow sensor. We'll set that off to the side, and now we have access to everything in here. We have our throttle body, which is right here on the front. We're going to want to disconnect that, and you'll have your fuel rail in here. I'll get a close-up and show you, but before we go any further, let's go ahead and disconnect the battery. Since we are going to be disconnecting some electrical harnesses, it's a good idea to disconnect the battery before you do that. So let's head over to the battery, get that disconnected, and then we'll start disconnecting these pieces. Set that off to the side. Coming in here from the front, you have your fuel rail, which goes on that side, and it's on this side. If you want to see a video I did on how to replace your fuel injectors, you can check that out via the link above. I'll also have it down in the description. We have a harness up here that's going to have to be disconnected. You have your knock sensor back there that's going to have to be disconnected as well. That's your fuel pressure regulator. That can stay put because that's all part of the fuel rail, which is going to stay with the intake manifold. You have your fuel injectors. Here's one of the harnesses right here, but you have 8 of them, 4 on each side. You will need to disconnect those harnesses as well. And let's head around here to the side. Here on this side, which is the driver's side, you have these 2 fuel lines. We will have to disconnect them and remove those from the fuel rail as well. And we also will need to remove the throttle body because you have your cooler lines that go into the bottom. We don't want to be pulling on those. So we'll start now by disconnecting this harness, and then we'll disconnect the coolant lines so we can remove this from the intake manifold. We can put that off to the side. This is held on by 3 10mm nuts. The ones I have on here are aftermarket, but they should be the same. I believe the normal ones are also 10mm. So we're going to go ahead and loosen that. Looking underneath, you have these little hose clamps on here that'll need to be removed, slid out of the way, and then I'm just going to use some hose pliers to pull those off and slide that back. And gently pull that back. Now be prepared, because you may have coolant in there that is going to spill out. So we'll come back here. right. Now with everything removed from the throttle body, we can finish taking the nuts off. Make sure you don't lose the nut. You can slide this forward, it'll come right off. With the throttle body removed, we can see some of the bolts holding in the intake manifold. You have 5 on each side. You can see there's 1 here, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And on this side, there's 1. You can see 1 tucked back here, 2, 3. And they go back there, 4 and 5. Next, we're going to remove this 10mm nut here from this harness where all these electrical wires are coming through. There's also a harness back there that needs to be disconnected. We're also going to disconnect the knock sensor as well while we're at that. And we have this harness here that also needs to be disconnected. And then we can remove this whole thing from the top of the intake manifold and push it out of the way. And now we can raise this like here, and we can move it out of the way so we can slide the intake manifold from underneath of it when we pull it out. Next, we're going to remove this hose here where it connects in. Just pull that back. If it's tight, sometimes you may need to take a flathead screwdriver, gently push on it. Don't want to damage it, but just kind of work it back a little bit. Push that out of the way because we'll need clearance there. Next, we need to remove this whole piece here. That's held on with an 8mm. So I'm going to take that off so we can get that out of the way, push that off to the side as well. If not, when you go to pull it, this line is connected and you're going to wind up damaging things. Here on the driver's side, connecting in and going on top of the intake manifold, you have your positive crankcase ventilation hose that needs to be disconnected as well. Next, we're going to disconnect the 2 fuel lines. Now to do that, we're going to take a rag. I'm going to put a rag underneath, and then we'll be back to start disconnecting the lines. First thing we need to do is get these little safety clips off. You should be able to grab it. Just pop it off like that. And you have one on the bottom one as well. You just lift up on the little tab. There you go. Pop that off. Now we'll get our fuel line release tool. Pop it in there and we can pull these out, but we need to release the pressure from the fuel rail first. So let's head over to the Schrader valve so we can do that. Coming on the passenger side, here's our fuel rail. This is your Schrader valve. So if we unscrew this little knob, we'll see the valve underneath. There's the valve. You want to put a rag under that as well. We'll get a flathead screwdriver. We'll push the little tip in, and release any pressure. That way when we disconnect the fuel lines, we're not getting gasoline spraying out. Just press it in gently. Release all that. There we go. Now this particular vehicle was just driven. That's why we had all the fuel pressure still in the fuel rail. If the car sits a little bit, you won't have as much, but this car was literally just driven. And I wanted to mention at the beginning, but you got to be careful also, like in the case here, it's still very hot under here. So just be careful if you're working on a car right after it's been driven. Next, we'll take our fuel line release tool and we'll slide it right here on the fuel line. And we're going to push it all the way in here until we hear it click. Let me see if you guys can hear it. But it's in there now, so I can just pull that back. And I'm actually going to use both hands, so I'm going to secure the camera so you can see it better. There we go. Still a little bit of fuel in here still. We got the pressure out, but yeah, definitely a lot still in there. All right, I'm going to do the bottom one. I'm not going to show it, but then we'll be back. Both lines have been disconnected. Take this out of here. Coming along on the passenger side, there's a vacuum line right here that we need to remove. So we'll just pull that off. There we go. We don't want anything getting caught and broken. Tuck that there. And on the other side, we have another vacuum line that goes to the brake booster. Let's head over that side. And it's right here. Connects to the brake booster, goes here into the back of the intake manifold. So we'll detach it here, and then the only thing left to do is then to disconnect the harnesses to the fuel injectors, and then we can start removing the 10 bolts and pull this thing out. Grab this. Now to disconnect the harnesses from the fuel injectors, you have this little locking tab here that you can pull up. If it is completely stuck in there, you may have to press. There's a little button. Let's get a close-up and I'll show you. Right here up top is a little button. If you push that, you can pop out that little lock. But now to pull it off, we're going to push that in with a screwdriver and then gently pull up on that harness, and that should come right off. Take the screwdriver, and if you push in, and you'll see that move. You'll see that I don't know if you saw that, but let's do it again. That bends in. So I'm going to push that in, and then we'll pull up, and that should slide right off. You'll hear it click, and then you can just slowly lift it up, and that's it. I'm not going to repeat this for the rest of them, so I'm going to go ahead now and disconnect the other 7, and then we'll be back. All of the fuel injectors have been disconnected on both sides. Let's head over here and I'll show you. And let's see here. All the connectors all pulled out. I also disconnected the alternator harness from the back just to get better access. It's up to you. You don't have to, but it was getting in the way. Now, one thing that we still need to do is right here, this harness right here for the knock sensor, that's actually connected here to the top of the intake manifold. So we need to just slide that off. it has a little clip holding it on, so we'll just pull that off. There's the clip. So if we just lift the clip up, get that out of the way, that way it doesn't get caught. The next thing is to remove the 10 bolts from the intake manifold so we can remove it. I'm going to go ahead and just fill right here, put a rag in here where the throttle body would be, just so no junk and debris goes in there when we're pulling it through. For the bolts here in the front, I'm going to use a long extension on the ratchet. Those are 8mm heads, hex heads on those. As we get towards the back, I'll use a shorter extension because that's going to be too long. So let's go ahead and take these off. Here along the firewall, I'm using just a 3-inch. Still a little bit of a tight fit. I'm using a hand ratchet for this video since most people watching may not have all the tools, but if you have either a pneumatic or an electric ratchet, it would help because you're not trying to hit everything. You can just put it right in there and take it off. If you want to see a product review I did for a nice pneumatic one, an impacting one, you can check it out via the link above. I'll also have it down in the description. All of the 10 bolts have been not removed because you can't take them out, but they've been completely loosened and pulled up. So there's our intake manifold, nice and loose. We're going to pull it out gently. You want to be careful because especially like a vehicle like this one where this is all original, this is old, there's a lot of junk and debris. You don't want that falling down into the engine. So I'm going to pull it out. We're going to work it out gently, and then we'll clean any debris that's left behind to ensure that nothing falls in. Want to move this hose out of the way as we pull this out. Let's lift this from the back. And you want to be patient. You don't want to snag anything and rip anything in the process. Put it in the back. There we go. You could remove the alternator if you wanted to give yourself more space, but I did not want to do that. Just gently work this off up here. You don't want to be ripping anything. You have vacuum lines for like the fuel pressure regulator that you do not want to damage. Now we can pull this back. Work that back. Gently pull that through. I'm going to bring the camera onto this side so you can see what you need to work through here. This right here needs to work its way under the fuel rail. You don't want to snag it and break it. So gently just work it through. Once it's out of there, like right here. And is it getting snagged? Nope, it's got it. So it's out. We can pull it here. That way it doesn't get caught. So we'll pull that through, move that out, and then we are home free. This is everything here. This is our intake manifold. This is our gaskets. You have 4 here and 4 here. I'll get a close-up. They look rough. We'll also get a close-up in here so you can see what we're looking at, but we need to clean all this now. You don't want junk falling in there. So let's get a close-up, and I'll show you everything, and then we'll move on to removing the old gaskets, cleaning it real good, putting new ones on, and getting it reinstalled. This is the area where the manifold was. You can see how filthy it is. We need to clean that very good, but we also need to plug these openings up so junk and debris doesn't fall in there. But look how dirty that is. Now let's take a look here. Here's the manifold, the intake manifold. And this is the old gasket. These are your fuel injectors. Now these look very good because I just replaced those. If you want to see how to replace the fuel injectors on a 5.3 liter V8 Chevy Trailblazer or any one of the vehicles utilizing the 5.3 liter V8, you can check it out via the link above. Also have it down in the description. But look how filthy that is, and gasket looks terrible. Let's look on this one here. So we need to remove that, clean that real good, and then also clean in here so we can get ready to put everything back. Next, I'm going to spray some degreaser on this side. We'll clean that real good. Then we'll move on to this side, fill those holes, do the same thing on that side. But let's spray some degreaser on here, let it sink in, and then we'll clean all that junk off of there. If we need to, we'll take a scraper and scrape any debris from where the gasket was, get it all nice and clean and smooth. Before I finish filling up these other holes here, just wanted to show you some of the junk. There's leaves in there, all kind of debris got in here. But you see how filthy that one is? This side's done. That's how it should look. Degreased everything, cleared off any remnants of the old gasket, got them all nice and smooth, looks great. We're going to do the same with this side, and then we'll be right back. Look at all the junk in there that needs to be cleared out. Just finished cleaning the driver's side. So if we get a look at it this way, looks nice and clean. Ready for the new gaskets to come in place. So let's swap it out on the intake manifold, and then we can start putting everything back. Now to remove the old intake manifold gasket from the intake manifold, let's see if I can get here on the side. You have this clip, you just pull it up, and that snaps off. And then there's one here on the other end as well. Right here. So just pop it up, lifts right up. Now you want to make sure that you don't let debris fall into the intake manifold. So I'm going to tilt it down a little bit when we do this. Roll it down. And there's another clip here in the middle. This comes right off. And we'll take a look at it, but these gaskets are really bad. Then we're going to clean in here before we put the new ones on. We're going to wipe away from the openings. Be careful with the fuel injectors, but we want to make sure that there's no debris left behind that could hinder the new gaskets. So I'm going to clean this off real good, and then we'll be back. Just finished this side. Everything is nice and cleaned off. We scraped off any debris or residue left over from the old gaskets. I'm going to do the other side, and then we'll be back to put the new gaskets on and then start putting everything back. In this hand, I have the new gasket. Here's the one that came off. You can see how flat it is. It's supposed to be elevated like that, but look how filthy. Let's put it on. To put the new one on, we have the center clip and the end clip, so we're going to line it up, push it down, you'll hear it click. There we are. Do one on this end. And that's it. This side is on. Let's flip it over. We'll do the other side. Same way on this one. You'll see here that clip here on the end. So we'll attach the middle one, come down here, do the same on this one, and that's it. Gaskets are in place, and we're ready to put this intake manifold back on. We're ready to slide it in. We're going to drop it in gradually. We want to make sure that we feed any lines that need to be fed through as we're putting it in. We don't want to trap anything behind it and have to pull it through, and we definitely don't want to crimp any wires. So let's start sliding it in gradually and reconnecting everything. First thing is this one here that has to slide underneath the fuel rail. So as we work it in, we'll drop it in gradually. We want to be careful that we don't mess up the gasket either. So this can get pushed back as we bring this one forward. Line it up to slide right underneath the fuel rail. Get this harness up. There we go. Gradually start dropping it in. There we are. You can see it coming through. That's the biggest challenge, is that one. The other things we just work our way around. So I'm going to slide it into position. I'm not going to film the whole thing, but I'm going to work it in gradually, and then we'll be back to see the placement before we bolt everything down. All right, it is in place. A little bit of a task getting around this alternator. As mentioned before, if you want to remove it, you can. You do get better clearance, but if you're patient, you can work around it. So I have it in place. Gaskets all lined up. Everything was brought through that needed to be brought through. So we can reconnect all of that. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to bolt down the 10 bolts, bolting this intake manifold back in place. You want to make sure you torque it properly to spec. You don't want to over tighten it. So let's go ahead and put that on, and then we'll be right back. Now for tightening it down, you do not want to start like here at the end and work your way back. You want to start in the middle. So you have 5 bolts on each side. So what I'm going to do is start with the third one in. We'll do that one, then the third one in on that side. Then we're going to go to the second from the back there, and then crisscross. Then go from here to here, then the final one in the back to the final one in the front, final one back, final one in the front. So we're going to go middle, inside, outside, crisscrossing. Get them all down, and then we'll torque them properly. I'm not going to show all of this part putting everything back, so we'll be back to look at it once it's done. Once you have these in, I hand tighten them. Next, we're going to take the torque wrench on them. These only torque to 8 foot-pounds of torque. You don't want to over-tighten them. So let's get the torque wrench, torque them properly. Okay, we are at 8 foot-pounds. I'm going to go around and torque the other 9, and then we'll be back to finish connecting everything up. All 10 are torqued to 8 foot-pounds of torque. They're all good. Next thing I'm going to do is connect the fuel injectors. And to do that, we're just going to take this harness, just slide it right on. Let's see here. Till you hear it click. Then we'll take the lock and slide that in place. I'm going to go around to the other 7, reconnect all of those, and then we'll be back. All of the injectors on both sides, see if you can see it there, they've all been reconnected. So next thing we're going to do is attach this and go ahead and bolt this harness back on up top, and then we'll be back to start connecting these plugs here, the knock sensor, different things like that. We'll attach this harness here. Now the knock sensor, we need to bring this piece here, and let's get a close up here. We need to reattach it up top. So let's push this out of the way here, bring it around, and then this clipped here. Now with the clipped, plug into it. That's attached. And then we have the harness up here. Just plug that in. So now that's attached. And if we come over on this side, don't forget, we had this vacuum line right here. It gets attached. Put that back. All that's good. This has been reattached to the brake booster, this vacuum line. Next, we're going to reconnect the fuel lines. We'll do the bottom one first. Get a close up here. Push that on until you hear a click. You know it's locked in. We'll do the top one now. Same thing until it clicks. Perfect, those are on. Now we have the positive crankcase ventilation hose coming off the PCV valve. We're going to bring it up top and reconnect that all the way in. Good. And don't forget to put the locking clips back on. The top one and the bottom one, both get them. Next we can remove this and we'll put the throttle body back on. Slide this back. Keep the hoses out of the way. I'm going to go ahead and bolt everything back up, then we'll reconnect the cooler lines on it, and then we'll be back to put the air intake on, and we're done. Don't forget to reattach this hose here, right behind the throttle body. There we go. Next, we're going to attach the harness to the throttle body. I'm going to attach the air intake duct from the mass airflow sensor to the throttle body, and then we'll go ahead and start the vehicle. Of course, don't forget to reconnect the battery as well. Everything has been put back on. The air intake duct is all secured. Battery's reconnected. I'm going to go ahead and start the vehicle, and let's check it out. Now keep in mind that we did empty out the fuel lines, so you may want to prime it a little bit before you start it. There we go, let it prime. We'll let it prime a couple times to really build up the pressure. All right, let's start it up. All right, well that wraps up this video on how to replace the intake manifold gaskets on a Chevy Trailblazer with a 5.3 liter V8. I hope that this video was informative for you. I hope it helped you out with any projects that you're working on. If you have any questions or comments, please send them in. I would love to hear from you. And as always, I appreciate all the support. Please like the video and subscribe to this channel. I'll see you next time.